Well, he's the front runner for the Mississippi State baseball job, but there's a red flag most people are missing. Is the hype justified, or are the warning signs being ignored? Let's break down what's really going on.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jaron Spor, national college football writer at Athlon Sports. That's Landon McBride. We've got an exciting show for you today. To start things off, we're going to talk about Brian O'Connor. We've talked about him quite a bit for the head coaching job, but there's something Landon and I both think that people are kind of missing when they look at him as the front runner for the job. Also, it's a massive recruiting weekend this weekend for football. We'll break down who is expected to be there. Also, basketball portal, while nothing is official, doesn't look like they're going to get a commitment that they once thought they might be able to get. So we'll break that down. That will be to end the show. But let's start things off with Brian O'Connor. He's obviously the Virginia head coach. We've talked about this quite a bit, how he kind of, even though he's been at Virginia a while and he's built a really good program, he kind of doesn't feel like he has the backing that he needs.
Right.
But I think what people are forgetting is we've talked about Texas A&M being the number one team in the country preseason and not making the tournament. Virginia was number 2 and also didn't make the tournament.
Yeah, and I wonder if that, when the last time something like that has happened where, those two teams like have.
I think I saw that it said it never has happened, where both of the top 2.
That's insane. But, yeah, it was a weird year for them. And, when you have someone with a track record like Brian O'Connor, you can't just be like, oh, they're falling apart this season. That's, he's done. You have to look at his whole body of work. And, yes, it's concerning that this is happening right when you're looking at possibly hiring him to take over a program that you think needs to take the next step. But really, the only other season where they've really underperformed was 2018. So, in his 21 or 22 years there, to really only have 2 seasons where you fall well short of expectations, it's a very good track record.
Well, and if you look at their schedule, they actually caught fire at the end of the year. So they kind of started playing like the team that was ranked number 2. Now, they ended up having a quick exit in the ACC tournament. So it's very similar to Mississippi State in the fact that they were really playing really good baseball at the end, but it didn't show up in the ACC tournament. Also, another thing that I realized, if you go through their schedule, the amount of games that were canceled is unreal. They even had a whole series against Florida State canceled. I assume it's weather related.
Yeah.
It doesn't say right off the bat, but and Florida State we know is a very good team. Mississippi State's in their regional, so maybe if you win one of those or 2 of those on the road, that gets you into the tournament. But they were a team that, again, number 2 in the country to start the season, really struggled early, but kind of caught fire at the end. So I'm not going to act like I'm a know-it-all on Virginia baseball. So was it an injury that started that made them struggle early on? I would assume no, because they were a bubble team and they didn't get in. And typically, if you're a bubble team and you had a major injury early and that's why you struggled, you usually get in if that guy's back and you're playing really good baseball. And so, or basketball or whatever sport it is. So I would assume that wasn't the case. They just kind of started sluggish. But it also makes you kind of think, because he feels like he might not have the backing, but they had obviously the roster, or at least what people thought was a roster when you're the number 2 team in the country in the preseason. So you can't be blaming everything on the boosters and your NIL, initiatives.
No, you really can't. And so I kind of looked up what were some of the reasons for why this team didn't perform well, didn't meet its expectations. And stop me if you've heard of these 2 reasons before: uneven pitching and defensive struggles.
Right. That's Mississippi State in a nutshell.
And going through his history, that doesn't seem to be something that happens often. I think this is an aberration for him, but it's just a bad time for it. When you look, what was it? It was the year 2015. They struggled with injuries, had some defensive issues early, ended up winning a title. So, something that looked like it was going to be a bad year turned around for them. So I don't know. It's hard. Waz from Oregon is my personal favorite for
and that's who we're both interlocked on that one. Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard to say O'Connor's not a good candidate just because of 1 year. And we talked about it with Lemonis and what happened with Parker coming in, taking over. It's just sometimes your messaging gets stale somewhere. And maybe a little bit of that is happening. He's been there for over 20 years, still a great coach, still putting together great rosters, but maybe the players just aren't hearing it the same way. And that would not be the case at a new stop.
Well, and I don't want to act like he's not a good candidate. If he got hired, you should be happy as a Mississippi State fan. Now, we both want Wazikowski from Oregon. We think he's the best candidate, but O'Connor has a proven track record. Now, what I will say, I see a lot of coaches a lot of times blame NIL or they blame the backing, but the reality is they're just not really committed to the portal. And it's not necessarily the backing. They're just trying to put the blame somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I've read some stuff about that with O'Connor, that he's not really fully into the portal in this new era. Yeah. And a lot of coaches that have been coached for a long time feel that way in all sports. And so that's kind of a worry also that a lot of people aren't talking about. Is he not committed to where this thing is going? Because it's not going to wait on you or reverse course. This thing is headed that way, and you better get on board or you're getting left behind.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things, especially some older coaches still embrace it, but it's usually the ones that haven't had the great success. The ones who have had the success in the old way have an issue with the new way, and he had a lot of success. So maybe it's slow to adopt, and maybe it's kind of a chicken or the egg. Is he not embracing it because he's not getting the support, so he's not able to chase the guys he wants, or is he not chasing those guys, and so his NIL isn't really backing him on those type of players? So I mean, that's a conversation you have to have if you're considering hiring him. That's something Selman has got to go into, because we've talked at length about the NIL here and where it needs to go and improvement of facilities and all that. I mean, he'll have the support here.
Yes.
He'll use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another question. Is he using the portal for swinging for the fences for one or two guys, then not getting him and being like, what the heck? I didn't have the backing. Well, that's not really how it works. You can't just go for a guy that everyone in the country is sought after and then not get him and be like, oh, that was on y'all. That's not on me. That's on y'all. That's just not how it works. And so, but with all of that, they still were preseason number 2. So there were still apparently a lot of high expectations about this team. Yeah. And a team that a lot of people thought was a really good roster, and they underperformed.
Yeah, he can still build a team, transfer portal or not. The extent he's using it, we're not entirely sure. But, I mean, he still put together a good roster, and he's still a good coach. So, even though he's not the guy I would want, he would probably be 2 or 3 on my list. I mean, it would be hard not to be excited about him coming here. I mean, you put together his track record, what he's done, something he built from scratch to – I mean, not from scratch, but mostly from scratch there to what he would have available Mississippi State. I mean, the sky's the limit if he comes in and is actually committed to the new way of doing things.
Well, and that's why Mississippi State is a very high sought-after job, in my opinion. It's not just because of the history. I mean, that's obviously a big thing. It's not just because you're in the SEC. Again, a very big thing. But the backing for baseball seems to be there at a very high level, where it's not at every program. Whether that's right or wrong, we've talked about many times, several debates about should you be this bought in on baseball when it's not really going to make you much money. Who knows? But the reality of it is Mississippi State is. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's an attractive job. But you just kind of worry, has the game passed him over? Because of what just happened this season and kind of the concerns that you're reading from Virginia. Mm-hmm. Now, is that stuff that's being put out by Virginia so people don't try to prod him away from there? Make him less sought after? Who knows?
Or is it he's already got one? It's the old Boston media trick. He's got one foot out the door, so let's torch him on the way out. I mean, it could be that they might know he's going somewhere for a bigger payday with more backing already. Like, he may have been kind of upfront with them about that. If I get approached, I'm gone. So that could be some of it. But there is concerns that I don't know if it's passed him by yet, but it seems to be in the process of passing him by.
Yeah.
So I think you have to have that conversation. It's like, look, you got to be bought into this NIL. You have to be bought into the transfer portal. You have to do all of that, or this is going to be a very short tenure for you at your next job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, so this upcoming weekend is massive. Several recruits will be on campus. Landon and I are going to kind of break down what Mississippi State needs to do to land some of these guys and get another top 25 class. We'll talk about that coming up next. Well, the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So if you're watching a game, let's take the Oklahoma City game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Game 5 was a crazy game. The bench for Minnesota was going off. Maybe there's a few players, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo, that you want to put some money on because of the performance they're having. You're able to do that during the game. That makes it super easy. Also, if you kind of got to read on this guy just doesn't have it tonight. Anthony Edwards, for example, he's just not playing well. Or game that was actually game 4. It's game 3. Oklahoma City wasn't playing well. So maybe you put a money on them to kind of stay under their points. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think, finished with 14 points. So maybe you put the under on that. But if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to set up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so as I was just saying before break, this is a massive recruiting weekend for Mississippi State. 12 official visitors will be coming into campus, and the majority of those are out of state. We were talking about this with the recruiting budget. What was that, last week maybe, where you have to be able to reel in some of these out-of-state guys, and while they're not going to those out-of-state homes, they're bringing them here at least. And so some of the guys that are coming are Jordan Crutchfield, who's a defensive back, Javen Holmes, TJ Umanora, Ontavious Watts, defensive lineman Dylan Berryman, and Caleb Morris, linebacker Terrence Pinnock Jr., Jack prospect Chris Addison, Chris Carbon, and Cameron Wilson. We talked about Chris Carbon, I believe it was yesterday, about him possibly, where he has set his commitment date, but this possibly being the thing that gets him over the hump. And then offensive lineman Donnell Robinson. And so we saw just last summer, Jeff Levy and his staff, they collected a lot of commitments within those official visits. And from what I've read, the trend could continue this weekend.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys coming in, and a lot of guys coming in that I really like. I mean, just Dylan Berryman and Donnell Robinson are two, both, defensive line, offensive linemen. A lot of guys uncommitted. There are a couple guys who are committed to schools coming in this weekend, so maybe you're flipping some guys. I mean, one of them is committed to Louisiana Raging Cajuns. I mean, that's a school you should be able to out-recruit. If you really want him, that's a guy you should be able to get. Another Cameron Wilson committed to Syracuse. You should be able to bring him. You should be able to flip him. If he wants to come here, that should be an easy flip.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of guys that this could be a huge weekend. I mean, we mentioned Brody McCorder's comments about how he's doing a little recruiting on the side, which is great from a quarterback, especially a rising prospect, to be like, no, come here. We're going to do this. And maybe these are some of the guys he's been on the phone with. Maybe he's ran into some of them at camps and he's getting them in it. And after this visit, maybe we see kind of a windfall, 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm not sure if these were the guys he was talking to at the camps. Maybe they were. But we just talked about it when we talked about his comments earlier this week. You're sitting at 8 commits. You were like 43rd in the country in recruiting class ranking. I mean, things are got to start picking up for you, and it would start with this weekend. And like we mentioned last summer, during this big weekend is when they started reeling off some commits. Now, it's a little different because at that point you hadn't played a season yet, and so you were selling them on this vision. and you didn't have anything on the field to kind of show like, hey, here's our vision working. Hopefully after year one, you can show them here's our vision working, but going 2-10, you can't really show them that either. So you have to still kind of sell on the vision and the overall outlook of the program, and hopefully these players buy into that. But this is where you can start reeling off some commits. And McWhorter said these next couple weeks are going to be exciting for Mississippi State fans. And this would fall into that next couple weeks category.
Yes, it would. And it would be exciting if some of these guys start flipping. I mean, I mentioned Cameron Wilson. He's committed to Syracuse right now. We're 6'5", 210. That's a weird body type for a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
So after I've gone over the list of the visitors a couple times, and I kind of don't think Brody McWhorter was talking about many of these guys, because if you look, there's only one offensive guy coming.
I'd say they're pretty much all defense.
One guy, and it's an offensive lineman. Now, I'd be calling a bunch of offensive linemen if I was a quarterback. I'd be trying to get all of them to come with me. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of momentum comes out of this weekend, though, because there's so many people in. Maybe you get kind of a little group thing going where 3 or 4 of them start thinking, hey, we could come here together. We could really do something if all of us are here. And you get kind of that mindset. It's going to come down to if these defensive coaches can sell the vision for what was one of, if not the worst defense in football last year. And if that's a big sell.
Yeah. No, it is. Umanor is kind of one I have my eye on, the 3-star cornerback. He did an unofficial with Mississippi State this spring, loved how family-oriented the staff was. But he did an official visit with Northwestern. That was earlier this month. Then, like I said, he's visiting Mississippi State this weekend. But he is going to visit Michigan State. That's later on in June. And he just received an Auburn offer. And so it remains to be seen if he ends up taking a visit there. But that would probably be late June, early July. So it's probably a little wait and see for him. But maybe you can sell him on something where he shuts it down and doesn't take that Michigan State visit, doesn't take that Auburn visit. That would be ideal. So he's one I've kind of got my name on, kind of got my eye on. And then I mentioned it when I was reading off some of the names. Chris Carbon, because he's committing, what was that, July 4th weekend, I believe it was, is when he's committing. Yeah. Because he's committing then, and that's a race that we listed the teams. You can win that race. You can get his commitment. This is going to be the deciding factor, in my opinion. Yeah. If you can sell him, he will end up committing to you. If you can't sell him and he leaves with more questions than answers, or he still leaves with a lot of questions, it's going to be difficult to get him when he decides to commit.
Yeah, this weekend is really going to show us what kind of recruiters this coaching staff is.
Yeah.
Because if you can bring in multiple recruits that you're competing with, some you're competing with other, schools that you're relatively equal with, some you're flipping from, programs that are a tier down. If you can pull that off coming off of the season you just came off of, where the class stands right now, it's a good class, not a great class. If you can get a bunch of these guys in, or even if you don't get the firm commitments, you start seeing they're leaning Mississippi State tweets coming out.
Right.
That's huge. Which, speaking of guys like that, he's not visiting this weekend. One of the guys that Brody McWhorter probably was talking about, Charles Humphrey, massive offensive tackle. Mississippi State's list is the favorite. I mean, you guys 6'7", 291 out of Knoxville. I would assume he's probably one of the guys that we see a commitment from in the next couple of weeks, even if he isn't coming this weekend.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And so we'll see what ends up coming out of this official visit weekend, this big weekend. Hopefully you can get some commits. They get around the guys and you can get some people locked in. But if not right away, maybe within the next week.
Momentum with them.
Yeah, you just need some momentum coming out of it for sure. All right, so coming up next, it's not official that they're going to lose out on this basketball prospect, but it's likely, and we'll talk about who they might replace him with. That's coming up next. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so Mississippi State's kind of been in the wait-and-see mode for Ven-Allen Lubin. He's the North Carolina transfer forward. He's 6'8", about 230. some of the teams that were mentioned for him was Auburn, NC State, and then Mississippi State. That's kind of been the three. He averages 9 points for his career, about 5 rebounds, or a little over 5 rebounds. He shoots 58% from the field. Just would be a really solid addition and maybe even a starter for you if you're able to land him. Auburn kind of said, I'm not waiting anymore. We're moving on. NC State got a commitment. I can't remember who they got a commitment from, and it kind of seemed like they were like, yeah, we're moving on too. But now it sounds like he's probably going to NC State. He's a guy that's played at – he's been in college for 3 years. He's gone to Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, and North Carolina. So he's gone to 3 different colleges. Don't want to act like
try another state. I mean, he's already been in North Carolina.
I don't want to act like it wouldn't be a big loss because it would be, because I think he'd be a really solid addition to the team. But kind of what I've read is it sounds like he's going to go to NC State, or he's not coming to Mississippi State though. Yeah. And they're either going to get an international prospect, or if a 2026 prospect reclassifies to the 2025 class, which is possible, maybe they kind of fill that spot with one of those guys.
Those are both very interesting routes to go. I mean, we both talked about Lubin a lot. We both liked him. And if he isn't a starter, he's probably your 6th or 7th man. So, I mean, and he fit kind of the role we thought they needed. So there's not a lot left in the portal that you really go, yes, that's a good fit. We need to get this specific guy. International players for college are such a crapshoot. I mean, you will see them a lot of times. You see them come in their first 3 or 4 games. You're like, holy crap, this guy is good. And then he just disappears for the rest of the year and averages 2 points and 2 rebounds the rest of the season. It's like, I don't know what happened there. And guys who reclassify are very hit and miss. Sometimes you see why they reclassified. They 100% already.
Jaron, who's going to be a top 5 pick from Oklahoma.
A lot of times, though, you're like, you need to still be dunking on 16-year-olds. You need to not be up here.
It would be a filler kind of roster spot. Whether you go the international route, you go the 2025 reclassification route, whichever you go, it's likely a filler, because even these international guys, a lot of times they are guys that also need a year or two to kind of adjust to the new game. Every now and then you get this big high-end prospect that's like a can't miss that comes over here, but more often than not, these are guys that they're not coming to college if they're a big-time athlete like that, because they're already playing professionally wherever they're at, in Europe or wherever. And so usually the ones that are coming here are guys that they have something to prove. They think the college game will help boost their ability to get to the NBA or maybe go back home and play professionally. So it would be a filler position. I wouldn't expect it to be someone that's a rotational guy.
For speaking, the whole conversation about international players had me thinking, is Lowry Markkanen the last guy who really came over who did something?
He'd be one of them, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's other guys who are role players, but I mean, he's the last one that really came over that you're like, oh, this is a big one.
Right.
They got something there. So, I mean, if they get an international player, regardless of what they've done overseas, you really have to temper expectations.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it would be probably a filler, because even the top end international guys have probably already committed and are somewhere already. If they're not playing professionally. I'm just saying the ones that come to a college, those top end guys are probably already found their home. So the ones that you'd pick up now are guys that have kind of fallen through the cracks, who are like, I don't want to go to some small college because I could just play professionally where I'm at. Or if a big school does come calling, I will go. And so it would be something like that. I wouldn't expect much out of them. Or like I said, or the reclassification player.
Yeah, most likely not. I mean, maybe you find the next Jokic. I mean, who knows? Maybe you got one.
But even Jokic, I mean, early in his career, did not play much at Denver, and so they just have to, it's a different game. And I wish worldwide they just played the same rules, and then it would be an easy transition. I actually like the European rules better than the American rules, which is funny because this is where it was invented, but still I kind of like it better over there.
Sometimes things they got to go through some workshopping, and they find the right way for it to work out. And Europe nailed that one.
Yeah, I still feel like one of my favorite rules is if someone shoots it and the ball's sitting on the rim, you can swat it off in Europe.
Oh yeah, it's a great rule.
I love that rule. But yeah, So we'll see. Like I said, I think it's just going to be a filler spot. So not much, but all right. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over on Athlon Sports. That's Landon. Follow us, Locked On Mississippi State. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We will post a daily question in the comment section on every YouTube video, so we love your feedback on that. We also post a poll, which is a separate question. It's also on YouTube, so we love your feedback on that one as well. If there's something you want us to talk about, put it in our comments. We'll start breaking it down, especially I'm assuming this coaching search will start heating up after this weekend. So if you want to know more about a particular candidate or anything like that, just let us know, and we can kind of talk about that stuff. But until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.